See, yesterday we had discussed about loading data from a file, text file to a table, right? Using bulk insert task. If data is huge, we can go with bulk insert task, right? And today, let's say if I have a files, let's say I have a files, some 4 files in my folder, right? So there is a folder called source files, and within that I have a 4 files here. Okay, maybe let me delete one. I don't want 4, so let me use 3 here. Okay. Yeah. So I have a 3 files here. All of them are flat files, and it has some data 1 to 11, and the other file is having some 20 to 25 5 records, and the another one is having some 5 more records, right? See, we have 3 files. So if I want to load all these 3 files data, how can we load it, guys? Any idea? What's your basic approach as per your knowledge as of now?
Taking flat files in that uh, uh, data flow task.
Data flow task, but by using data flow task, we can load only one file at a time, right?
Yes.
So if you want to load multiple files, then you need to take 3 data flow tasks, right?
Multicast we can use.
Multicast, how many sources it will accept?
More than 2.
Multicast?
One source.
Multicast will accept only one source and it will load the data to multiple destinations. Here we have multiple sources, right?
Oh yeah.
So for this, we have to use a looping concepts, which we have like for loop and for each loop container. So we have a looping concept called for loop and then for each loop, right? So here you can see the containers part for loop and then for each loop. So when we have to use which one? See, all these loop contents are used to loop files within a folder, right? See, for loop is used when the file count is known. It is used when file count is known. Why? Because see, basically in for loop we need to use expression like for I equals to 4, I plus plus, something like this, and then I less than or equals to 4, which means we are setting a variable count as a 4, value count as a 4, which means we have 4 files and it will increment by one, which is I plus plus, and then the condition is less than or equals to 4, which means if the number of count of files reaches to 4, the execution will get stopped, which means it will load only 4 files. If let's say for today we have 4 files in a folder, let's say tomorrow if 6 files comes, it will load only 4 if you give condition like this in for loop, right? So if you give condition with only 4 files, the value is 4. Then if next day by any chance the source file count is increased, instead of 4, 6 files are there in a folder, then the for loop will not work. It will work, but it will load only 4 files. The remaining 2 files will be skipped. Okay. So to avoid this issue, we have a for each loop container. It doesn't look for count of files. It will load how many ever the files are there within the folder. It will load all the files in a folder. It doesn't look for any count, right? So now tell me, irrespective of the file count known or unknown, we can go for each loop container, right? Agree?
Yes.
Right? So irrespective of file count, we can use for each loop, right? Why? Because it doesn't require any initial value, how many files is there in the folder. You don't need to specify anything. So Nowadays, we are not using for loop container. Why? Because it needs a count of files in a folder, and if let's say file count is increased, it will not handle it. So irrespective of that, we'll go for each loop container, right? So now let's talk about for each loop container, right? Either we know a file count or file count is unknown, we can use for each loop container, right? So now to use for each loop container, so we need to drag a for each loop container into a design pane which is in control flow level, right? So the name itself says container, so it is looks like this, the container part which is uh, bigger than the other tasks, right? So here if you open the for each loop container, you can see the general tab. Within the general tab you have name and then description, so it is just for your information. If you want to change the name of the container, you can change it. And then if you go to collection, here you can see there are few enumerators, right? So please try to remember all these enumerator types, and majorly we'll use for each file enumerator, which is used to load the files in a folder. And rest all we have ADO for each item enumerator, for each ADO enumerator. These are used to loop the table values, right? So you can remember rest all values, but we are going to discuss about for each file enumerator, which we are going to use in real time, most of the scenarios, right? But at least in interview, they might ask you like how many types of enumerators does for each loop supports. They'll ask you. You need to remember at least 2 to 3. But you can say in my project I have used for each file enumerator, right? So try to remember at least 2 to 3. Okay, and I'll explain all these options. Okay, for now let me click on OK. Now what my requirement is, as I told you, I need to load all these 3 files which is there in the source folder. I need to loop it, right? So as I explained you, for each loop container is used to loop the files within a folder. So but will it load data into a table? So to load data from a source into a table, again we have to use data flow task. But for each loop container will loop the files, that's it. It will not load any data into a table. Okay, so to load a data into a table, we have to drag a data flow task into the for each loop container inside the loop. Okay, so what happens, now for each loop will try to give one by one file at a time. So one file it will loop and it will provide to data flow task. Once it is done, again it will iterate the second file and it will give it to the data flow task. And again, if one more file is there, again it will give it to the data flow task, right? That's how it will work. And using data flow task, we'll load data from a source to destination. So here our file type is a flat file. I'll just take flat file source. Guys, please go on mute. And then my destination is YLDB destination. Okay. And
If it is 10 flat files, that is 3, so
it will
so
load all
that
the
3
10.
times.
Yeah, if it is 10, it will run 10 times.
So it takes more time, or within a fraction of seconds data
No,
flow
if
task?
data is huge, it will take some time. If data is less, it will run fast. That depends on the data. And now we need to create a flat file connection manager, right? So let's create it. So create new. I'm browsing the file, SSIS sample files, source folder. I'm giving the first file here, EMP details. Okay. And then I'm leaving all the default items over there. Click on OK. All right. So I've just created a flat file connection manager now. And my destination is October 2021. And the table is EMP details as it is. Okay. As we are using the same table, I'll use the EMP details. But before that, let me check, is there any records in the table? If it is there, we'll drop it just to cross verify. As of now, we have 13 records. I'll just truncate the table data. So truncate table table name. So as of now, we can't see any values in it, right? So now what I'm going to do is, so this is a warning message, maybe truncation may occur. That is what it is saying, the database length. We'll see. Warning will not fail the component, okay? For your information, it will just a warning, and it is saying that in future, if any source value increases, it may get failed. That is what it's saying. And see, I have configured the for each. See, I didn't configure anything the for each loop container, right? So go to a collection, and by default it will be for each file enumerator. Let it be as it is. And here you need to choose the folder which you are working on it, right? So browse, and what is your folder? You need to browse it. So training stuff. Sample files, and then source files. So this is my folder, right? Source files. I'll just choose it, right? And then here you can see files, right? So files means star dot star is there. If before dot star means it is the file name. So star means file name can be anything. After dot star means it is the extension. If you want to load only txt files, you can give this extension, which means if the folder is having multiple files, let's say Excel is also available here, then it will load only .txt files, right? So if you want to load only Excel files, you can give XLSX. If let's say the folder is having both Excel and also the flat files, let's say I'm copying Excel file here. Right? So I have both flat files and also the Excel file. But if I give it now only .xlsx, it will load only the Excel file here. It won't consider the .txt files in that folder. That is what this option, right? If it is star means it will load all the files irrespective of the type of the file. It will load txt file, it will load Excel file, it will load CSV file, right? So now we have Excel file also in it, right? So let me give .txt file. Okay, it should load only those three files. We'll check that. Okay, and rest all options I'll explain later. Okay, for now I'll click on OK. Save it. So the basic configuration I have done it. So let me explain. Let me execute the package. As of now, my table doesn't have any records. So right click, execute package. How many times did it run, guys? Did you observe that fraction of seconds it executed thrice, right? If you'd observed. So let me go to table and check the data. So 33 rows are there. So let's check, let's validate the data. So 1 to 10, till now we can see 1 to 11, and then again 1 to 11, and again 1 to 11. So is that what the file data is having? The EMP detail file has 1 to 11, and the other two files having 20 to 25, and this one is having 16 to 46, right? So what happened, you know, so it has taken the count of files as 3, and the same file ran thrice. That's what you can see. 11 into 3, 33 records, you can see it in the destination, right? So it did not load 3 different files data. It has loaded the same file data 3 times. Why it ran 3 times means, since it has recognized that number of files are 3, so the same file, it has executed the 3 times, right? So now the issue is here. We have created a connection manager, the flat file connection manager here for the source, but we did not make it automatic. see, we are explicitly providing the only one file name, right? But I have 3 different files which are name is different. How can it pick these 2 files? As I mentioned, only emp details.txt file in the connection manager. That's why it is loading this file 3 times. So to make that connection manager dynamic, so dynamic in the sense, how many ever the files comes into the folder, it has to loop all those files. But using a normal connection manager, we can load only one file. So as of now, we can see, right? So we can load only one file, but since we have used the for each loop container, and the for each loop container identified that we have 3 text files, and we have one Excel that will not count. Why? Because we have given here .txt. Agree, right? So txt files are 3 in the folder. That's the reason why same file has executed thrice, right? So now we have to make that connection manager dynamic. So to make that connection manager dynamic, we have to use the variable concepts, variables in SSIS. So like I explained you, SQL parameters are variable, right? We have used like declare at the rate, right? So declare at the rate variable name, empid, something like this, right? So what it is, it will hold in SQL, it will hold the value temporarily, right? The same way, we have a variable concept in SSIS, and if you create a variable in control flow, that variable can be accessed all the tasks within the package. See, right click and you can see variables here. There is option called variable, and you can see a pop-up. And if you go to data flow and if you create a variable, it is this. If you go to data flow and create a variables, that variable is restricted to only this data flow task. Only this task you can use that variable. But if I drag one more task here outside it, and you cannot use that variable which you have created under data flow in this task. But if you could create a variables in control flow level, which means if you are on the control flow and if you create a variables, that variables you can use in any of the tasks within the control flow. That is the difference of creating a variable in control flow and data flow, right? So I'm under control flow, I'm creating a variable. So to add a new variable, so there is an icon here. If you mouse over it, you'll get to know. So this is adding a variable, and this into mark is deleting a variable. So I'm adding a new variable, and my variable name is, I'll just give source path. Okay. And data type, since we need to store a source path value here. This is our source path, right? So we need to store this path in a variable, right? So since it is both characters and numbers, so we need to use string data type, right? String is nothing but varchar, and paste it here. Okay, which means I have created a variable called source path and its type is string, and this variable is holding a value of the file path. Okay, now I have created a variable which is source path, and now what I need to do is I need to pass this variable which is having the connection manager folder path into this connection manager, so that this path will become a dynamic, right? How to do that is, you just need to click on the flat file connection manager, right? Just click on it, single click, go to properties. Here you can see expressions and the properties of a connection manager, and click on that. If you click it, you can see here 3 dotted, click on that, it will open a window, and under the property you should select connection string. Why? Because since we are making the connection manager dynamic, you need to choose property as connection string and go to expression now. So here right side you can see 3 dotted symbols, right? So click on that, it will open the expression window. Like I used to explain in beginning classes, right? So if you create any user variables, you can see it. Now you can see, right? Source path, whatever we have created. And these are the system defined variables. I think I have explained this few days back. The mission name, package name, right? task name, right? So the system defined variables by default, you can see if there is a user defined variable for this package, you can see it here with user : that variable name. So drag and drop that user variable and leave it here in the expression window. And now there is an option here, evaluate expression, which means it will evaluate the value which is there in the variable, right? So this is the value which holds the variable, right? So if there is any error in the path, it will throw error here, right? So since it is correct, so you can just evaluate it and leave it. Click on OK and OK, right? So you made the connection manager dynamic. Now see, you can see effects. The normal one, you cannot see these effects, which means you have made this connection manager dynamic. And same variable, see, you have made the connection manager dynamic, but you also need to make the for each loop as well dynamic, right? So if you did not make it, so let me try to execute it again. Okay, so now I made the connection manager dynamic, and I'm gonna truncate destination table again. So I have 0 records, and I'm executing a package. Execute package. It failed. Why it failed? So cannot open the file, something it is saying, right? So why? Because see, you have made the connection manager dynamic, but you did not made for each loop also dynamic. Why? Because you have made the connection manager dynamic, it is trying to read multiple files, but the container you did not give a variable, the same variable you need to map it here in the variable mappings. Then the connection will become in sync for each loop and also connection manager, right? So you just need to double click on the for each loop container, go to variable mappings and give that variable whatever you have created, which is holding the source path variable, right? So provide that, click on OK, save. And now I'll show you one more time. Here we don't have any records in the destination. And go to solution, right click, execute package. See, it has executed successfully. If I go to table and execute now, I have 20 rows, right? So let's check the value of the value in the table. So 1 to 11, that is what my first file is having, right? 1 to 11. And what values I do have in the second file? 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. Can you see those values? 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. So till here, this is my second file data. And I have one more file. Let me open that as well. Excel to flat. And it is having 4 values, 16, 26, and then 36. Can you see those values here? 16, 26, 36, and then 46. Right? So this is how you need to make the connection manager dynamic. Any questions, guys? No questions? Okay. And
Amar,
now,
can you repeat what is the main purpose of hello?
yeah.
In simple words, the purpose of this for each loop is in order to make number of sources into single file.
Not
is it
number
right?
of sources. See, the purpose of for each loop container is, if let's say you have a folder, source folder, and within that folder you have multiple files, something like this.
Okay.
Right? So if there are multiple files, if you want to load it, basically how can you load multiple files in SSIS? By using data flow task, you can load only one file at a time, right? So initial class we have discussed that, right? So only one flat file and one destination, correct? And maybe you have to drag one more. See, you can also drag here there is another feature where you can use one more source here, one more flatfare source and one more OLEDB destination. But for this, you need to create one more connection manager, correct? For the second file, you need to create one more connection
Yes.
manager. And if there is one more file, you just need to use again one more flat file source, one more destination. For that, you need to create one more connection manager, right? How many ever the files are available in the folder, all the time you need to create those many connection managers. And let's say if the next time the file name changes, it will not consider, right? Correct? The file doesn't exist, it will throw. But here, since
Yes.
we are passing this path as a variable through variable as a source file, and it will read whatever the files which are available in the folder, and it will loop all those files, and it will load the data of the files, guys. And few guys will get confused. And here we are not loading the files, we are loading the file data into a table. Okay, we are loading a file data into a table. And then see, let's say for today we have loaded this data, and if I try to tomorrow again, my source team is trying to paste the same files again here. What it is saying, is it overwriting or it is creating a new file? It is creating a new file hyphen copy, right? But if these files are there here again for tomorrow, if we execute the package, again this file data will get loaded, right? Correct? If you keep today's files also in the same folder, and let's say I am copying one more file for tomorrow, which is this one, and if I execute the package, it will load yesterday's three files as well, right? Correct? If you not remove from here, are you guys following?
Yes.
But it will be duplicate, no?
Yeah,
Then
that's
also
what.
it will be.
Yeah, it will be duplicate. So for that, once we load the files, we have to move these files into another folder like archive. Archive means once you process is done for today, whatever the files you have loaded, you just move it to another folder. That is archive, right? So to move that, see, as of now, we just learned like how to load multiple files in a folder into a table, right? So now we are gonna learn how to move these files loaded for today into another folder, which is archive, right? So that's we are gonna learn, and using file system task, we can do that. Okay, there is a task called file system task in control flow, and that we are gonna learn tomorrow. I think it's time up. Tomorrow I'll take 1 hour class. I'll just give you a brief introduction of file system task here. And if you open the file system task, you can see the operation. There is an value called operation here, and if you expand it, you can see these many operations it will perform: copy file, delete directory, delete file, move file, rename file, right? So all these operations it can perform, the file system task. We are going to use move file. There is an operation called move file, which means it will cut and paste. If you use copy a file, it will just copy and paste it. A copy of the original file will stay in the same folder if you use copy, right? So that's why you should use move. Move means cut and paste, right? So this is what we're gonna learn tomorrow. And guys, since tomorrow is a festival, can we have class in the morning? Fine, everyone. 9:30 or evening only fine for you? I think evening it will be disturbance, right? So backup should be
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Morning is better, I think.
everyone fine, guys.
Yeah.
9:30.
Okay.
No,
Yes.
morning I can't attend.
Morning it will be trouble. Morning we have a lot of works at home.
So evening it will be disturbance for us, right? So and we cannot skip
A lot.
maybe 11 o'clock fine, everyone, or 10. 10 a.m.
Yeah, before afternoon at what?
Mhm.
Not possible up to 2 o'clock, I think, for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, we need to do houseworks, right? We have works at home tomorrow, lot of works.
Okay, let's connect in the evening 6:30 p.m. Yeah. And guys, I'm starting a new batch on Sunday. If you have any references, you can let me know. You can give my number and then ask them to message me on WhatsApp. And okay. And yeah, that's it for today. We'll connect tomorrow again 6:30 p.m. Thanks for joining, guys.